What if my father touches me? I would appear to be tricking him, and would bring down a curse on myself, and rather than a blessing. His mother said to him, My son, let the curse fall on me. Just do what I said. Go and get them for me. So he went and got them, and brought them to his mother. And she prepared some tasty food, just the way his father liked it. Then Rebekah took the best clothes of Saul to her older son, which she had in the house, and put them on the youngest son Jacob. She also covered his hands and the smooth part of his neck with the goat skins. Then she handed to her son Jacob the tasty food and the bread she had made. He went to his father and said, My father. Yes, my son. He answered, Who is it? Jacob said to his father, I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Please sit up and eat some of my game, so that you may give me your blessing. Isaac asked his son, How do you find it so quickly, my son? The Lord your God gave me success, he replied. Then Isaac said to Jacob, Come here so I can touch you, my son, to know whether you really are Saul or not. Jacob went close to his father Isaac, touched him, and said, The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Saul. He did not recognize him, for his hands were hairy like those of his brother Saul. So he blessed him. Are you really my son Saul? He asked. I am, he replied. Then he said, My son, bring me some of your game to eat, so that I may give you my blessing. Jacob brought it to him, and he ate. And he brought some wine to drink. And his father Isaac said to him, Come here, my son, and kiss me.
I want to thank Ethan for reading that passage. That was a challenging, long passage of Scripture, and it's also one of the wackiest stories in the Bible. Sometimes we read things like this and we think that can't be true. But, the longer you live, you realize that wacky things happen all the time. And here you got a mom who has a special child, and it's her son Jacob, who happens to be the younger of the two sons. And she convinces her son Jacob to use trickery and deception to convince his aging blind father on his deathbed that he's really the older son, because that way he can get the blessing of the father, right? That was a big deal in those days. When a father gave his blessing, and typically it was to the oldest son, this special blessing, what it did was it conferred authority and kind of like priestly leadership in the family once the father's gone. So it makes that oldest son have the responsibilities of authority, that he would take that on when the father's gone. And mom, Rebekah, convinced the youngest son, and it wasn't just telling the father, well, I'm Esau. Remember, Dad couldn't see, Dad was hard of hearing, Dad was very sick. She actually strapped animal skin to his arm and his neck, because the older brother, Esau, was sent out to hunt game. His dad said, go out and bring me some game, some live, go hunt and kill an animal, bring it, cook it, and then when we do that, that's kind of like a little ritual where I'm going to give you my blessing, because I don't know how much longer I got. So Esau is out hunting game, and mom convinces Jacob to go into the death room, the deathbed, and say, I'm really Esau. I'm the oldest one that you sent away. I've got some game here to prove it. And mom had him dressed up in a hairy suit to convince Isaac that he was really his older son. And Isaac bought it, was deceived, and gave the blessing, special blessing, to Jacob. Okay, so we got that story? Okay? All right. We tend to like movies best when things are cut and dry. Real simple. Okay? The good cowboys wear white hats. The bad guys wear black hats. We see the history of the West as settlers who are simple folk trying to carve out a living, while we see the Indians as savage beasts with deadly arrows and tomahawks, cruel intent. You just kind of see it that way. Growing up, I guarantee you every Western was like that. There was no complicated story or moral to be found there was no really having to weigh anything. It was just presented. Cowboys good, Indians bad. And it was like, we loved Westerns. Just like when we watched big time wrestling. It's all natural encounters, right? Nothing is scripted or predictable, and so you always knew that I can't remember whether this sheep was a good guy or a bad guy. But we always knew who would win. Sometimes they got beat, but then they'd come back and they'd win in the next one or whatever. It's like Star Wars. You know who wears the black cape, right? Who has the breathing disorder. You know that's the bad guy, right? It's easy. So we know this, and this is the way we like it. And sometimes we think the Bible should be that way. We think the Bible is that way. That's David versus Goliath, Jews versus Gentiles, Christians versus pagans. Easy to figure everything out. It's just that's the way we're taught this when we're in Sunday school. Right? We want to quickly judge who's the saint, who's the sinner, and this is especially true of women. And even to this day, I believe that women are held to a higher standard of behavior. Whether it's in our classrooms, whether it's as in the community, we tend to hold up women to high standards, and boys can just be boys sometimes. And boys are that way. It's just the way it is. And so women of the Bible tend to fall into the category either holy and pure or corrupt and scandalous. There's no middle ground. We put Mary, the mother of Jesus, on a pedestal with a glowing halo, right? Okay? But we judge other women of the Bible as schemers or harlots, especially women who are childless or unable to conceive. We want simple stories. We don't want things complicated. It's just the way we like it. But how quickly we forget that according to the Bible, we're all fallen sinners in need of redemption. All of us. That Jesus came to hang out with sinners and knew they were sinners. Those are the ones he could really help. That he insisted that we not judge others. That if we're going to put others into some kind of a category, there's only two categories that are really true. And the first category is those who have found the love of God. And then the second box, if you're going to put somebody in a box, the second one is those who still need our help to find the love of God. And that's it. Besides, look back on your own path to get where you are today. Life's complicated. We sometimes veer off, trip, or fall. We sometimes get covered in mud. Much of our wisdom or truth, much of our knowledge, if we're honest, has come from trial and error, failures, stupidity. And so I tell graduates, I tell us all that you need to remember this. Life is complicated. It's often unpredictable. It's often uncontrollable. It's more about how you handle things than it is what happens to you. Don't expect a smooth glide path to the stars, because life is complicated. So are you. So am I. We all are dealing with mixed motives, twists and turns, bad with good, good with bad. And that brings us to an Old Testament saint and sinner, hero and villain, Rebecca. We've kind of been looking at women of the Bible, particularly Old Testament, trying to see how God uses women, uses us all, and even sometimes a questionable character. Now I have to admit, when you hear the Bible story that Ethan read today, Genesis 27, 1 to 26, it seems as clear as crystal. Rebekah urged her son Jacob to lie and deceive his father. She used trickery in order that he might receive a special blessing. And so it seems clear to us that this Rebekah is a scoundrel. She's a manipulator. She is disrespectful to her husband. She is contemptible to her other son. And so we just, that story makes it clear. You know, once her mission was accomplished and Jacob received the blessing, then she had to tell Jacob to go scram. She said, you know, your brother's going to be kind of angry when he gets back at you. Maybe you ought to take off. You know, try to protect Jacob. Send him away, and he went. Believe me, he took off. Because he had just stolen his brother's blessing. So if that's all you understand about Rebekah is this story from today, you'll have no problem condemning Rebekah as a liar, a cheat, a deceiver, nothing more. But I want you to consider these three things about Rebekah. All right, number one, Rebekah sought to be obedient to God. You say, well, how's that? I'll tell you. Rebekah was chosen by God to become Isaac's wife. Genesis 24 makes it clear that when Abraham prayed for a wife for his son, Isaac, Rebekah was the direct answer to that prayer. Abraham sent his messenger off to look for a wife for his son. He went to a faraway place, the land of his birth, and this messenger, this servant of Abraham, stopped at this well and said, Lord God, may the woman you desire to be my son's wife, may she emerge and give him and provide me water. And that's when Rebekah appeared. She gave water to the messenger, to Abraham's servant. She gave water to his camels. She invited him to have shelter. She was very hospitable. And this messenger went on to stay with Rebekah's family. And so clearly, Rebekah was the answer to prayer. She acted in compassion. She willingly chose to go back with the servant and become Isaac's wife, knowing that it was God's plan. She put her faith in God just as much as she did in Isaac. She recognized that this was the path of God. And so Rebekah was obedient, sought to be obedient to God. That's number one. Second thing you need to remember about Rebekah is that she was aware that God's plan involved Jacob rising up above his brother. She was aware of that because she was barren, unable to conceive for about 12 years. And Isaac prayed, her husband prayed, that she'd be able to have a baby. And she did. And guess what? She had two. She had twins, Esau and Jacob, the twin brothers. And the Bible says that they struggled inside her. The wording was, the babies jostled within her. And so she prayed to God, Rebekah did, and she said, why is this happening to me? What's going on here? She didn't know she had twins. She just knew there was a war going on. She said, why is this happening? And the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb. The 2 peoples will be separated. The older son will serve the younger son. And so Esau pops out first, right? And then immediately behind him is his brother Jacob, who is grasping his heel, the Bible says. That's how he got his name. Jacob means to grasp the heel. I don't know why anybody would be given that description, but that's the way he came out. And also, it's also one who supplants another one, which means takes his place. So these brothers were born in conflict. And Jacob was second born, but he was grasping at the heel of his older brother. And God told Rebekah, this is before the story that Ethan read, God had told Rebekah that Jacob would rise above his brother and that the older would serve the younger. You know, God does this all the time. If you remember, David was the youngest of his brothers, but yet chosen to be king. This just happens continually. God lifts up the younger, the weaker. And I believe this. I believe it's to show his strength. God's strength is shown 1,000 times stronger through weakness and defeat. By lifting up someone in weakness and defeat, then God is shown strong by our strength. Does that make sense? We can see God must be doing this if it was a weaker person, if it was somebody who has no resources, no great plan, and God lifts them up. You've seen people lifted up by God that way, haven't you? people who seem to be clueless, people who seem to be much more difficult speaking, people who are weaker and more emotionally weaker, I've seen that all the time where God will lift that person up and everyone around them says, what happened to that person? People who are addicted. How is this person now the head of this foundation? How is this person running a firm of 100 employees? How is this person speaking so eloquently, so forcefully, so persuasively? God seems to be enthralled with lifting up the weak and lifting up the needy. It's what he does best. And so God said, Jacob will be the one. And the point here is Rebekah knew it. Rebekah heard this from God himself. Okay? So God's strength is often made evident most when working through our blunders. Okay? And it was Jacob who would eventually father 12 sons who would later become the heads of the 12 tribes of Israel. And by the way, Matthew makes it clear that the lineage of the genealogy of Jesus goes through Jacob, not Esau. This is all important to remember when we think about Rebekah. So Rebekah knew that God's plan favored Jacob, and rather than patiently wait for God to lift Jacob up, Rebekah decided that God needed her help. Right? She acted impatiently. Okay, she convinced her son to steal the blessing, or to pretend, deceive his father. And Rebekah didn't wait for God, and God would come through somehow. So this is a story of trust. Trust in God. Just because God told Rebekah that this was going to happen doesn't mean God was saying, go cheat, lie, and steal to get it. Right? She had to trust, but she didn't. Trust is a big deal. Okay? Trust in God is very important. To make this clear, a little more clear, we had an outdoor get-together yesterday, and I'm fretting over the weather, you know, when we get up and the forecast is for 80% chance of storms and rain, and the bad weather was to arrive and last exactly the hours of the party, right? And in fact, on my cell phone, Weather Channel said relentless storms. That was the forecast. I'm not kidding. It said relentless storms. I've never seen that before. And so I'm just agonizing, you know. I'm pulling out whatever hair I can find, you know. And I'm thinking, and I'm telling Celia, you know, we need to cancel. We need to move this inside. We need to move it inside. And you know, and Sam saying, no, we got to have this going to be outside. And he was right, you know. And I had prayed 2 straight days for decent weather. I mean, I've never prayed like that for decent weather, that much, you know? And so we get out there and it's fine and it's still and it's beautiful and the temperature's perfect and we get set up and we're, okay, when is it going to come? You know, when is the wrath of God coming? And we had the party, you know, and it was 4 to 7 and I'm not kidding, it's 7:01. There was a boom in the sky, thunder, okay, and the kids come pouring into the shelter, and you know, it's like the ark, you know. And it started, there was a few drops of rain, it started to rain, but then that went away too, and it was perfect. And you know, all that fretting, all that worrying, all that, we changed plans, and you know, we ended up trusting because that was the vote. I had trouble trusting God, I have to admit. Trusting God is so important, and sometimes we have to just be held still, you know, just don't do anything. Don't make things happen. And that's what Rebekah did. She kind of made things happen. Okay? It wasn't good, but it did fall in line with God's plan in the end. It doesn't make the means right. So we have to remember this about Rebekah. The third thing you need to understand is that Esau, the older brother, was not a godly man. He didn't respect being God's chosen people. He didn't respect being the oldest son. As a matter of fact, when Esau came back from the field one day, he was starving. He was starving. He saw his brother over there making lentil stew. Okay? His brother was a quiet man, but pretty crafty, you know. But he saw his brother making stew, and he said, I'm starving. I got to have something to eat. And you know what Jacob said to him? Hey, give me your birthright, and I'll give you some of my stew. Now, it was Esau's birthright. He's the oldest son, okay? It was his for the having, all right? And birthright is different from blessing. You got to remember that. There's the birthright and there's the blessing. The birthright is what the genealogy flows through, all right? That is the lineage of being, and that Matthew talks about that, goes all the way through Jacob to Joseph, all the way to Jesus Christ. The lineage, the birthright, comes through Jacob. Rebecca didn't get the birthright, or Rebecca didn't connive on that one. She got the blessing. The birthright was all Esau, because Jacob said to his brother, hey, let's trade. You give me your birthright. You take an oath that I get the birthright, and then I'll give you some stew. And like some dope, Esau said, well, I'm going to die if I don't eat. What do I care about a birthright? And he took a vow and got the birth. He gave up his birthright to Jacob. Okay? That probably was God, you know? The point is, Esau was just contemptible about God's design on his life, about being the oldest. It meant nothing to him. He had no respect for the ways of his people and the importance of his birthright. He spit on his family legacy is what he did. And the Bible says, in fact, that he despised his birthright. And so it was Esau who willingly gave up his birthright. It wasn't Rebecca. Rebecca got the blessing. So you see, this is complicated stuff. It's a complicated story. And we have to consider the whole picture of who is Rebecca. Rebecca, you know, was obedient to God in marrying Isaac. She knew firsthand that God intended to lift up Jacob over Esau. And besides that, Esau fully demonstrated his unworthiness, you know, his inferior devotion to God. Yes, Rebecca was impatient. Yes, she and her husband showed favoritism. You know, the Bible says that Isaac favored Esau. And his wife, Rebecca, favored Jacob. And I'll tell you what, favoritism is not good. This created a whole lot of problems for their families. In fact, it created schism. The families separated, created two nations. And for generations to come, there was war and problems between the two families. You know, the descendants of Esau, the Edomites, were enemies to the Israelites for generations. And so, just because this is in the Bible, just because it was in the end God's plan, doesn't mean that we didn't mess it up big time. Things got messed up because of this deception, because of this contention between siblings, and because of this favoritism from the parents. Things got really screwed up. Okay? That was not God's plan. But Rebecca was acting in faith. She was acting thinking she was doing God's work. She was seeking God's will, even though at times she was deceitful and manipulative. You know, and the ends don't justify, like I said, it doesn't justify what she did. You know, she was still a sinner. She deceived her husband. She deceived her son. She cheated. She lied. But here's the good news. Okay? God loves sinners. He seeks them out. He calls them to his service. He equips sinners to accomplish great things. And he includes them, sinners, in his plans. You know, what's amazing to me is the Bible, we read it and we think, well, that's all God's doing. God's writing this book. God's making all these things happen. That's not true. God incorporates our mess and our cruddiness into his stories, into his plan. Even the bad stuff, he reworks it, creates a tapestry from it. So we are allowed to be involved in the evolving story of redemption. Whether we do good or bad, it doesn't matter. Our action, it does matter. But whether we do good or bad, it all can be reworked by God to fall into place in what he wants. See how that's good? We're not just puppets. We're not worthless people. Our actions do count for good and for bad. But God uses it. God makes fuel out of all of it. God loves sinners. You know, Jacob was another great deceiver. He was a weasel by practice. He went on to meet God alone in the wilderness. What happened was, he set out to get away from his brother Esau. He knew his brother would want to kill him for what he did. So he took off. And so one night, he sees his brother and a party of people coming toward him. And guess what? He's frightened to death. He sends the rest of his family and everybody away from him. And he says, I can't outrun my brother for the rest of my life. And he just camped out all night waiting for his brother. The Bible said that he wrestled all night long with an angel of God. He struggled. And guess what? He was struggling with who he was and what he did. There was a change going on in Jacob. From being a weasel and a manipulator and a cheat, he struggled. And he kept asking God to bless him throughout the night. Says to the angel, bless him, just bless him, give me your blessing. In other words, tell me I'm going to be okay, that you're going to get me through this. Tell me that God loves me. And we all struggle to get the blessing. Sometimes it's a blessing of a parent. Sometimes we never get that. Sometimes we struggle with wanting the blessing of feeling like we're worth something or achievement. Sometimes we struggle with the blessing of wanting to know that we're doing something right or that God loves us. We all want the blessing, right? And so the morning comes. The Bible says that Jacob got his blessing, although he was very wounded from this fight. He went on with a limp and a sore hip. Okay? Kind of a reminder of the life that he led as a sinner and how it cripples you and makes marks that don't go away. And then his brother comes. The Bible says the brother ran toward him, forgave him. And Jacob was a new man and given a new name. His name was Israel. And so we know that Jacob eventually came to God. Okay? And we all seek this blessing. We all struggle with the notion that life is hard and people are complicated. Our birthright seems to be one of climbing and falling and climbing and falling and seeking the next summit. And left to ourselves, all we get is a mixed bag of tricks or a bowl of lentil stew. That's the best it gets. And we only get hungry again. Hunger always comes back. But with the special blessing of our Father, which has always been available, we, like Rebecca, can become a part of God's plan and God's story of redemption. Nothing further is said about Rebecca. Actually, the story goes to Jacob, continues through Jacob, because Jacob is the one, that's the story that we follow in the rest of the Bible. It's not Rebecca's story. It's God's story of redemption. And it follows all the way down to Jesus Christ and to us as recipients. And then the next generation, whoever that might be, they get the birthright if they want it. If they don't, despise it. And so let us seek to follow this story of God's redemption, to be active in seeking it, to be helpful in giving it to others, and because there's not just one that gets the blessing. We all do. And let us continue to seek God's blessing and be the children who are given the rights of complete redemption. I invite anyone who wants to come down. The communion railing is here, and the elements are, you're all invited. And let's be in prayer this time.
that it's you that we need. Start a fire in me. You only need a spark to start a whole blaze. It only takes a little faith that it's not right here in this city. So these old walls will never be the same. Over and over again, I hear your voice in